Hello and welcome to everyone listening to the Written Melanin Podcast, the place where you come to get your weekly dose of melanated creativity. I'm your host, CM Lockhart, an author of fantasy books featuring Black girls who aren't all that nice, and the owner of the Melanin Library, an online database of books written by Black authors. And in this space, I invite you to listen to the journeys of Black authors as they navigate all routes of publishing. I'm glad you're here. And today, you guys, I am here with E.A. Noble. She writes queer and diverse fantasy for the culture. So when readers open up EA's books, they'll see themselves on the page from the queer, BIPOC, disabled, fat, neurodivergent, the weird, the nerd, all the way to the morally gray. EA Noble has made it a life goal to uplift, support, and represent queer and diverse voices, especially in fantasy. And today she is on the podcast, you guys, and I'm super excited. I really feel like this is going to be a great conversation. So, welcome to the podcast, EA.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So, obviously, you have this amazing bio, but for anyone who is like, this is my first time interacting with EA Noble, what do you want them to know about you? How would you introduce yourself in your own words?
Honestly, I will probably introduce myself exactly that way. I am an author, a Black author, fat, I'm neurodivergent, autistic. I am all those things. And when people meet me and come into my spaces, I want them to know that I write stories with you in mind. I write stories about me. I write stories about you. I write stories about us. So when you open up those pages of my book, I pray or I hope that you see yourself within the pages. So that's how I will introduce myself.
I love it. I love it because anyone who comes on the podcast or who has interacted with me, I'm very vocal about the same thing. Like I always say, I write books about Black girls who aren't all that nice.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because it's just like, one, I'm a Black woman. And two, it's just like so many stories, especially growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? It's just like all of the characters were like, if there was a Black girl, she was relegated to being the super nice and sweet, understanding, wise best friend, the
Yes.
magical negress, if you will.
Oh my
And
God.
it's just like, no, sometimes there's a little bit of rage, okay?
Yes.
Sometimes there's a myriad of emotions that go behind these characters. So when you were like, hey, I include all of this, like this representation, it's here and it's authentic, I was like, I am so for that. I'm about that. And I support it 10,000%. 10,000%.
Absolutely. And might I add, I love that you write about stories about Black girls that is not all that nice. And it includes rage and not the trope rage. So I just want to say kudos for that because again, the angry Black girl is one of those tropes that I hate the most. But it's because they paint us as angry with nothing. We just got an attitude. Nothing's wrong. We just got an attitude. So I'm happy that you add in Black women who have rage, but it's more than just I am angry, you know? So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, because one of the things that I will always, always, always stand 10 toes down on is that Black characters are nuanced because Black people are nuanced. And I am very much of the camp that I'm just like, I want to see that nuance on the page. It's part of the reason why, for like my first trilogy, I was like, I want this girl to be an assassin. She's not smiling at you. She's not trying to be your best friend. And murder is absolutely an option. In fact, it's option number one. And then if that plan doesn't work out, we can explore other things, right? But it's
Exactly.
also like she still has her soft moments. She still has the people that are close to her. But
Mhm.
also, if you continue to get on her bad side, if you get on her nerves, murder is an option. Murder's an option.
That sounds familiar. Sounds like this chick right here. So
Hey,
I feel you.
so like let's talk about it, right? Because my first interaction with you was actually when I saw When Blood Meets Earth on the Melanin Library. So if you guys are listening to the podcast, y'all know what the Melanin Library is. If this is your first time here, welcome. I said it in the intro, but the Melanin Library is an online database of books written by Black authors. And that's how I first, like I said, came across you. And I was like, yo, this cover is like amazing. This is dope. And so I want you to know that in the early mock-ups of the website, your book cover is actually one of the placeholder files for when we were
Oh,
designing the
really?
website. Yeah.
OMG. I did not know that.
I mean, it's just one of those behind the scene things, but it was there. I saw it all the time.
No, oh my gosh. Bellamy, my main character, she is stubborn, a lot like me. She's a princess, but she's a princess on the verge of her bad girl era. This isn't just a regular princess with ball gowns and dresses. She comes from the Reaper Kingdom, where this is a kingdom that is built their entire existence on reaping, meaning, can we say killing on the podcast? I'm
Sure
sorry.
can.
I'm such a TikTok interviewer that sometimes
Nah, go for it. This is going on YouTube. We're good.
TikTok, we have to make up our own language to not get banned.
Yeah. I know
I'm
what you
not
mean.
sure.
I got you.
But a Reaper Kingdom, which is a nation, it's an army nation that reaps, that kills. And so she is half Reaper, half Earth. And so she has these two identities that she's fighting with inside her. This one that wants to rage, this one that wants to reap, this one that wants to go out and sword fight, versus the one that is telling her, that society is telling her, that you are a princess, so act like a princess.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I love it.
I'm excited for it. And if you're listening to this or watching this, y'all know that there will be links where the links are. So be sure to get into it. Then, like I said, it's on the Melanin Library. So y'all know how that works. But that being said, When Blood Meets Earth is your first novel, but then you also recently released Supersized Bubblegum, which is your second novel.
Yeah.
So before we get into like the depths of those, like take us on your writing journey from like what inspires you to start writing and what writing your first words to like all the way to your second novel.
Sure. So my writing journey, I feel, is a little bit different from a lot of people's writing journeys. A lot of people that start writing books, it's because they either didn't see themselves in the books or they were readers first. I was just a child that had an overactive imagination and nowhere to release it. So again, am ADHD, I'm autistic, and in the Black community, I think that, especially in the 80s, Black people with ADHD and autism, if you didn't look a certain way, you were fine. And so I went through life untreated and having to suppress all the things that, oh, you're weird, or those are quirks, or though you can't do that, stop that, and get in and being punished for having autism or ADHD, and I didn't know it at the time. So my outlet was to imagine, to create worlds, to create scenarios. And then I would start writing those scenarios down. Like, what if this happened? And I started writing it down. And about time I turned, I think 14, I remember my first book that I ever wrote was Total Barley. It would never see the light of day, but it was called Total Bartley, about a military brat that went to live in Alaska, and her journey as a high school student and being the unpopular kid at her school. And it's just so amazing that I was already creating stories and I didn't have access to libraries. I didn't have access to books. So the older I got, around about 15, 16, I then went out to my local libraries or my school center and started reading books. And I was in an all Black neighborhood. I went to an HBCU. So I proud myself in a lot of the media. and that's something, and that is a privilege that I had, being born in a community that is Jackson, Mississippi, Black city, Black schools, Black HBCUs. And therefore that's when my reading journey started to happen. Then after that, I joined Wattpad.
Special era. There's a special era of Wattpad prior to like
if you had to be there.
You had to have been there.
You had to be there.
Yeah. And it's different. We're not talking about the Wattpad that exists now. It's a completely different vibe.
Completely different Wattpad. That's when they was having stories. Oh my goodness. I don't want to go down that long journey, that road, because
I
I
was
can get
there with you,
sidetracked.
bruh. I was there.
Yes. And so I went on Wattpad. I start producing books like The Lesser Lights, which was extremely popular book on Wattpad. And then I started producing things like Blood Force and all these other genres where I was just writing. And honestly, if you survived on Wattpad during those times, you can survive anywhere. I don't care. Wattpad did not care. They didn't care about your feelings, about who you are, nothing.
Okay, so I'm going to interject right here because this is honestly a conversation that I have with like my author friends and my author council many times, especially because, as we get older and we exist longer in an industry, there are people who come behind you and obviously they come from a different generation, different era, their norms are different. And I'm going to tell you something and I'm going to hold your hand when I tell you this, okay? If you did not grow up putting your heart into a story and then putting it on the internet just to have a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl reading on her parents' laptop past curfew tell you that you are writing trash and that you need to do better and then leave a very detailed comment about everything you need to change, you're not ready for this. Okay?
You're not ready.
You're
You're
not
not ready.
ready.
You're not
It's a
ready. It's
but
a whole different ballgame.
it's a whole different ballgame. But in all seriousness, though, like being able to take critique and have people very publicly say, like, either I love this so much, I can't wait for the next chapter,
Yeah.
or why is this character doing this? You should do X, Y, and Z better. And I don't like
Yes.
this and I don't like that. You have a typo here and like you're not a professional. Grr. Like you
Yes.
get both of them in equal measure at the same time. And I feel like as an author, at least for me, that was very fundamental to being able to like take critique. It's like, well, the book is
Yeah.
out there in the world. It's y'all's now. I can't monitor what you do with it anymore.
Exactly. And to be honest, like I said, I was so deep in Wattpad at the time that I would join groups. We used to have Wattpad groups where all authors of Wattpad used to get together and then we would read each other's works and critique each other's works
Yep.
on Wattpad. And so,
Especially in the form like a read for read, like for like.
yes, read for
I
read.
remember those days.
I would say Wattpad is the fundamental ground that laid my authorship, because the things that I learned on Wattpad and how to access the reader and how to keep them in your story and keep them engaged, I learned that on Wattpad. I don't care what nobody say. Wattpad taught me so many different things of how to deal with critique, how to deal with readers, how to make an engaging plot, storyline, how to convey emotions, how to contact other authors, a community. I loved Wattpad, and from there, I just grew. I just started writing more stories. And what officially did it, what officially led me to When Blood Meets Earth was my story, The Lesser Lights, that was on Wattpad. It's not on there anymore. Someone stole it.
Oh,
Someone thought that story was so good. They literally copied the cover, they copied the story, and tried to sell it on Amazon.
that's
And people
crazy.
came to me and was like, "Is this you?" And I was like, "No," because I never thought that my story was good enough that people would want to pay to read it. And knowing that that person was making a whole lot of money on my book, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should start taking this serious. I wasn't even mad. It got taken down because Wattpad people, they come for you. So
They do. When you have a genuine like support system,
yeah,
community group, even if you're like, bruh, I ain't even mad about it. They're like, don't worry about it. We're mad for you. It's handled.
yes. They were mad for me. They got it taken down. That's all good. It was a foreigner. It wasn't even somebody that was in the country. So they got it taken down. And I started When Blood Meets Earth. I said, you know what? Let's do this. And let's do this for real this time.
Oh, yeah, no, that's real, and I'm glad that you shared that because something that I say many times, and I don't know if I've ever said it on the podcast, but I know I said it on my YouTube channel, Melanin Chat, whatever, but I'll say it here on the record, and it's just kind of like my firm belief is that as an author, the first book you ever write should not be the first book you ever publish. Like
Yeah.
there's growth.
Yes.
There's so much growth that happens, and even when you think like, oh, this is amazing, this is dope, my pen is fire, it might be you might have a natural talent, but I'm telling you right now, that first thing that you ever wrote, like let experience the world
Yeah.
receiving it before you decide that this is the profession that you want, before you dive 10 toes deep into it, before you're like, this is my identity, right? Like, it's
Yes.
cool if you know from an early age that you want to be an author, but there's so much more to it than just writing stories. And a big part of that is being able to navigate this industry.
Yes.
And a lot of that is, Goodreads exists. Okay. You're going to have to face that hurdle as an author, and if you can deal with teenagers ripping yourself apart on whatever is, I don't think Wattpad is the famous thing, is the thing now. I don't know where the children are at. Like, I'm
Yeah. I think an
removed from that era.
AO3 now.
Wherever you're at, hell, if you're writing on Tumblr, okay, whatever, just somewhere where somebody can come and leave a comment and you not know them from Susie's left shoe, okay, they can
Yeah.
just say whatever they want.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to, I think that's one of the biggest advices that I tell new authors or anyone, even older authors. Let's just check that for a minute. Even older authors, check that ego at the door,
Yeah,
please. Because if you aren't ready to hear critique, you're not ready to be an author. Then when you
and
get that, I have a critique for When Blood Meets Earth, which I just find it hilarious. I usually don't read my reviews, but you know how you first get your reviews and you kind of like
mhm,
quote them and things of that nature on your website, promotion, stuff like that. So I was going through and just getting clips of reviews. And this one person was like, oh, I DNF'd this because it didn't match my the vibes weren't vibing. And then I went to go look at all their books. They read white historical romances. My book was the only person of color in their entire list. Of course the vibes don't vibe.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, I just smiled and was like, oh, that's funny. But it is a no-no for authors to, oh, she DNF my book. Let me make a whole entire video about it and da 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 da, and you get in trouble. That's a no-no, people. I don't know why we feel that that is okay. It's not okay. People
you
have a
know,
right to stay how they feel. If it didn't match their vibes, it didn't match their vibes. If they didn't like your book because of X, Y, and Z, they don't like your book because of X, Y, and Z. Keep going, love. You know?
no, really, it's that part because one of the things that I will always stand 10 toes down on is when you decide to be an author professionally, like, because in my mind, and I know everybody doesn't agree with this definition, right? And you don't have to, but in Chelsea world, right? The difference between a writer and an author is published. That is the difference, right? And it's like when you decide to make that leap from writer, doing this for fun, doing this for yourself, doing this to post for free on the internet, it's not a career, but you decide to make that jump to being an author. And now it's a career. Now you're making money from it. You have decided to go from a regular person to a business. You are
Yes.
now a business. You are now the brand, and you have to carry yourself that way. Even if you're an indie author, this whole industry, consider them your coworkers. Okay. You're now in the office with everybody else. And how you act is going to reflect on your product. It's going to reflect on your book. It's going to reflect on how people see you because in 2024, people are not divorcing the art from the artist. The artist is part of the art, and you have to conduct yourself accordingly, right? But it's also this idea that as an author, my advice when it comes to negative reviews is always, always to have put your foot so far in that book that if someone doesn't like something that's in it, it was there on purpose, right? Like, okay, if you don't like Black girls who have rage, I don't care what I do with this book, you're not going to like it. If you don't like to a black man being absolutely obsessed with a black woman, it doesn't matter what I write in this book. You're going to be upset. You're going to be mad. You're going to be furious, but that was on purpose. You know, if you are upset with the relationships and the dynamics that are in the story, I hate that for you, but it wasn't a mistake. It just means that what I wrote didn't vibe with you. Doesn't mean that I'm a bad writer. And I feel like as authors, you have to get to that point. And that's why I say you need to, the first thing you ever write probably shouldn't be the first thing you ever publish, simply because you have to have that confidence, not the ego, but the confidence to be like, if you don't like this, it wasn't for you, but not because my skill, my craft, my pen wasn't doing what it was meant to do.
I 100% agree. I tend to, when I'm not writing fantasy, I tend to write Gothic literature, and that is a niche space. That is not everybody buys with Gothic literature, okay? And it tends to be horrific and graphic. And one of my favorite beta readers, she even read like Supersized Bubblegum, and Supersized Bubblegum has a grotesque scene in chapter 3. She's like, I can't get past it. It's so scary. And I'm just like, oh no, it's not. Just get past it. And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't. And it's so vivid. I cannot get past it. I was like, it's okay. You can just put it down. It's okay. But I do want to offer like some advice when it comes to handling critique. You're not special. And I know that is really hard to hear.
You're not special. Louder for the people in the back. You're not special, bro. You're not the first. Your feelings not the first to be heard.
My favorite book is the Broken Earth trilogy from N.K. Jemisin. Jemisin. Sorry.
I got you.
And I don't know where did Jemisin come from? Anyways, and when you go to her reviews, this is a Hugo Award-winning book. When you go to her reviews, 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, DNF, DNF, DNF. And this book is genius level writing. It has a ton of 1-star reviews. Whatever book, go to your favorite book in the whole entire world, the one you would die on a heel on about, and go to the reviews. You're going to see overwhelmingly amount of 1-star reviews. Why? Because you're not special. They're not special. None of us are special. We're going to get them. And if you don't know how to handle the 1-star reviews, you won't be able to survive in this career. You have to check your emotions. You have to check your mindset. And you have to know that this is what I write. It does not mean that I'm a bad writer. Like you said, Chelsea, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad writer. It's just that it wasn't for them. And that is okay. Let that be okay and keep going.
And I will add to that as an author, right? And as someone who like talks to a lot of authors, a lot of newer authors especially, one of the things that I cannot iterate enough is that when you do start getting pushback, when you do start getting those negative reviews, that is actually a sign that you were doing what you're supposed to do as an author in your career, because that means that it's gotten outside of your immediate circle, because your friends are going to love it. Okay. Their friends are going to be like, oh, your friend wrote this. I love it. Now, when you start getting to strangers, when you start getting to people who know nothing about you outside of your work, and they feel bold enough to go and leave a review, because also remember that you still did what you were supposed to do, because as an author, your goal is to make people feel things. And even if it was negative, even if they didn't love it, they felt strongly enough to go on the internet and tell you about it, which you still did what you're supposed to do. And the thing is, when you do get those 1-star reviews, a lot of times those people are going to tell you exactly why they didn't like it. And half the time, the thing that one person doesn't like is something that somebody else loves. So they're going to see their review and be like, oh, you DNF this because, you know, this character did not end up with this character, and it subverted this trope that I actually really hate. Let me go ahead and get into this book right now.
Exactly.
Like, it's really a badge of honor, and you really have to. It hurts. I ain't even gonna hold you. It hurts. It hurts your ego. It hurts your pride. It hurts your feelings. You're going to get mad. You're going to rage. You better have friends. Don't do it on the internet. Don't do it on the internet. Go to your group chat. Go to your mama, your sister, your cousin, whoever you need to talk to. Do it in private. with
Yes.
somebody who's going to hold that sacred and take it to them, whatever you say to your grave. All right.
Yes.
And then wear that one star like a badge of honor. Like, okay, cool. If something appeals to everyone, it appeals to no one. So
Yeah.
if you want to reach your audience, you really got to stand 10 toes down in who you are trying to reach. And for me, I'm gonna say that was a hard lesson for about a solid week, a solid like 7 days. I was mad. I was big mad, right? But then I was like, no, I write for Black women specifically. So
Yeah.
if you are outside of that demographic, I'm so sorry that the white men who read my book did not absolutely love it. I didn't write it for you. And that's not to say that every white man who picks up my book doesn't enjoy it. That's not true, right?
Yeah.
There are some who genuinely enjoy it but it does require that if you're not a Black woman, you have to be able to decenter yourself. And that's not a skill that everybody has. But we're not talking about me.
Yes.
But if you are a Black
I
author
agree.
listening to this, you really have to keep that in mind that you are going to be faced with a lot of readers who do not know how to decenter themselves.
Yes. Yes. And that's another thing too. Oh wow, it's so many topics. Oh my gosh. Decentering whiteness, people. One of the reasons why I wrote When Blood Meets Earth, because one of the questions that I had was, what if race doesn't exist? What if we was not judged by the color of our skin? What would happen?
Mhm.
Guess what? There's still going to be separation, classism. Like I said, this is an elemental. So this is, if you like Avatar, The Last Airbender, or Korra, you're going to like this book. It's elementals, elemental magic, and they're divided by kingdom. So Reaper Kingdom, Life Kingdom, Wind Kingdom, Fire Kingdom. And so based upon your power levels, power skill set, they still separate you into class. There's still an upper, oh, I have to center myself around this, this, and this, and this. And so decentering whiteness was one of the reasons what started me on this When Blood Meets Earth journey. Because what if that didn't exist? What if we can just be?
Yeah.
Even in our trauma, I feel like as a Black community, we still center whiteness. And I had asked this question to someone about, why do you feel that slavery and slavery movies are so popular in Hollywood? And my answer was, because it still centers whiteness. It still shows that they are the masters, and it shows where our place is. And TV shows that do not center whiteness always get one season. Always, because once you take them out and make it about Blackness and Black power and Black magic, they say, oh, no one wants to see that, when that's a lie. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, this is a very, I get very passionate about this. It's controversial, but I think it's controversial simply because there are people who have yet to do the work to really even understand what it means to center whiteness in everything, and to carry so much internalized racism within them in their life and how they navigate it. And so they aren't ready to have conversations, because recently, as of recording this podcast, I made a thread, right, on Threads, right? And it was a simple thing, because it was a conversation I talked about in the Melanin chat, but essentially an author said something, someone replied to it, and I didn't have an issue with what the author said, but the reply, I just remember the sentence being, if you think that people are going to the BIPOC section to buy a novel, you're Delulu. And I was just like, wow, that's a take. And I responded to it, and I was just like, first of all, BIPOC readers exist. And second of all, yes, they're absolutely going to the section clearly labeled and marked for them to go buy novels. Like, that's crazy. Right. That's a lot of centering whiteness in that one sentence. Right. And that's just what I said. I was like, there's a lot of whiteness centered in that one statement. And of course, they came back with a lot of vitriol. And then I responded to them, and I was like, well, let's like just address some of this. Right. And in doing so, I was just like, I was pointing out the fact that it was just like, so many people center whiteness in everything. Right. And all that I was saying is that, no, we don't have to do that. When I tell you, people don't like it when you say, hey, they're like literally everything is centered around that. And when you write stories that don't center that, I can tell you that right now, if you go to Goodreads and you look at the reviews for We Are the Origin, a lot of my worst reviews come from white readers. And that's not a thing where, because people like to say, well, why do you have to bring up race? Because you can't really have a conversation about centering whiteness and the effects of it unless you talk about race, because in America, at the very least, it matters, you know?
Yes.
And it's just kind of like, when you, like you said, when you take that out, because in my stories, I'm really big about that. I get to make a fantasy world. I get to make up the gods and the rules and the magic. I get to do all of this. And you telling me I got to involve race? Are you crazy? That's not where my imagination's so far beyond that. It's not even on the radar of things I want to include, especially since there are already so many books that tackle it with so much more nuance and patience than what I have to do with, right? And it's just kind of like, we got to, I get passionate about it because I'm like, no,
Me too.
especially as black authors, no, I don't have to center my story around the white character or the white savior or have them come in and do something special or have them. Let me ask you something. It's always the question of, if you don't include white people in your story, right? Because everybody in my books, they're black unless I tell you otherwise. Always, forever, right?
Yes.
But then the conversation, for me at least, has always come up of like, well, why aren't there? And I'm like, well, how many books have you read with white people where there are no black people?
Okay, first of all, let's just let's just talk about that, because I was just about to say that. First of all, there is far more books out there in the world that has all white casts. It doesn't matter if they have orcs, elves, whatever, all white people.
Even the most popular books have black
Rings.
people in it. And it's only in the movies.
Where are the black people? Like, what is that one show? What's that not Lord Ring? It's one where, blackface came out and the white man got pissed because obviously black, there's no such thing as melanated phase. What do you mean? This is a supernatural world. You can have people with green and blue skin, and you telling me that you can't fathom one with brown? That's insane to me. Do you hear what you're saying? And the fact that there are so many authors right now that exist that are popular that doesn't have any main black characters in their stories, or their stories, and if they do, it's always the magical Negro, whether it be male or female, that one token nigga, and it's always there to help the main white character. Okay?
Yep.
And the fact that those same people can read those stories and love them so much, but then turn around and look at black books that feature black characters, black love, black hope, black joy, and goes, I don't understand where I am, and I don't get it. Why is it all black? Why can't white people be in it? Are you serious? Do you hear yourself right now?
And see,
When
the
you go
thing
on the
is,
Goodreads list, and the Goodreads are telling you the best books of 2024, and now one nigga is on it, stop talking to me.
and honestly, it's so interesting because it's one of the reasons that I feel like as an author, I had to really kind of like let go of the idea of the validation that I wanted of being recognized in certain groups and circles and lists and just mediums, because it's just like, oh, this is going to hurt some feelings and I'm going to stand 10 toes down on it. It's worthless. I'm so sorry. The New York Times list is worthless. It's bought and it's manufactured. And I know this having spoken to traditionally published authors and knowing the numbers that they do. It is a very curious, it's an editorial list. It is not it's not based on numbers at all, actually. It is completely fabricated. And I hate to break that to you. So is every other list. And this idea, and this is, again, if you know me, this idea, this thing that I'm putting forth right now isn't going to sound radical for me, right? But if you're new here, welcome. I'm crazy. But it's just also this reason why I'm like, I don't subscribe to this mindset of being on the internet constantly asking and begging people to do better, because they're not. Babes, they're doing exactly what they came here to do, okay? They built the house on land that they stole, and they're not giving it back. So the idea that you want them to be included, that you want to be invited into the house, for what? For why? Okay, if they do, you're going to be there as the staff. Okay, and if you can follow the analogy, great. If you can't, let me put it to you a little bit more plainly. If you want real lists with diversity, you need to invest in people who are creating real lists with diversity, instead of begging the people who are not to include people. And they're going to do that. They're going to have that one token author. And I can tell you that right now, and this is no shade towards anybody, because I haven't read the book, right? And I have no ill intent. But I can tell you right now that Taya Skirma, Immortal Dark, being on the New York Times bestselling list, cherry picked. And I'm not saying that because I think the book is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's always going to be at least one, so they can say, well, look, this author's on the list. And it's just kind of like, there are certain authors who aren't on that list who deservingly should be, if we are going purely by numbers, if it's really just the best-selling list. So let's be real here. We have to look at the whole picture, and we can't just say that, oh, you're angry at the one person who is being held up. No, I'm not. I'm glad that she is. I'm glad that she's getting the spotlight. I'm glad that people are buying her book. I'm glad that people are supportive. I am rooting for everyone Black, as long as they like Black people. Let me add that caveat. But at the same time, we can have to have the whole discussion. Like, yes, it's great that she's being successful, but there are also a lot of other authors out here who are also being successful, who are not getting the same recognition, and asking them to give them the same recognition is wild. That's why we have to have podcasts like the Written Melanin Podcast, why we need the Melanin Library, why we need Melanin and YA, why there also, so you guys know, there are more databases that are up and coming and growing outside of the Melanin Library that support people of color and Black authors. So it's just like, as we go forward, it's like we really need to consider, as a community, right? A community of diverse readers. Where do we go from here? What do we want that to look like? Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Appreciate it.
No, I really enjoy the TED Talk, because one of the biggest things that I say, and I'll publicly say this, is I want Black people to stop begging for validation. I want queer people to stop begging for validation. I want disabled people, and I want neurodivergent people to stop begging other authors to include them in their stories. The reason why they don't include you in their stories, because they don't think about you. Listen to me. I need you to look at me and I want you to hear this. The reason they don't include you, because you don't exist to them. But there's plenty of authors out there like me who write queer, Black, neurodivergent, fat, disabled books, because I think about you. Start supporting people who think about you. That is my message. If I can't say anything, you don't get nothing else from me. If you are queer, BIPOC, disabled, neurodivergent, etc., 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 stop begging people to see you, and start instead invest in other authors and companies that see you, that you don't have to beg them, because they think of you daily. That's what we need to do as a community. And that's what I'm hoping. So I'm going to stand 10 toes down every single time. And every single book that I come out with is going to have representation in it, because I think of you all the time. Because not thinking of you is not thinking of me. And we can't do that. Right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Just so y'all know, the reason I write books about Black girls who aren't all that nice is because in real life, I'm actually not that nice. So I just like my own representation, right? And as Toni Morrison once said, like, if there's a book that you want to read that hasn't been written, then you must write it, right? I'm paraphrasing that because I don't know if that's the exact wording, but y'all have heard it before. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, then you need to go read some Toni Morrison. But that being what it is, it's just, if you are listening to this truly, sincerely, and you're a Black author, you really need to give thought to where you want to stand in this industry, because it is going to push and pull and get you to go in certain ways. And you have to know what you stand for, what you are willing to, what hill you are willing to die on. Because I'm telling you right now, my hill is I stand on supporting Black authors 100%, 10 toes down. Now, there are some Black authors who write stuff that I'm gonna be real with you 100%. I ain't never gonna read. I ain't never gonna crack open that book. It's not for me. And I know this. Okay. But that doesn't mean that I don't want them to win. That doesn't mean that I don't think that the representation that they are writing shouldn't exist. I believe that everyone should be able to write their stories and be able to make a living out of it, to be able to support themselves, to be able to have fair and equitable marketing. And I do think that this entire system is flawed in major ways that needs to be addressed, right? But I also think that part of that equity that we are looking for is going to have to come from us sitting and banding together and being like, you know what? We're going to move away from this, right? But I'm also very radical, and y'all know this if y'all been listening to the podcast, if you went to the Written in Melanin channel, if you've gone to the Melanin Library, if you've paid attention to literally anything I've done on the internet in like the last 5 or 6 years, you understand this about me already. But that being said, this has been an amazing conversation, and I could probably continue to talk about this for a very long time. But I do want to ask you before this gets like into another rant, right? You know, if you could choose, what lasting effect that your work in particular would have on people, what would it be and why?
It will go back. It's on the same lines of what we just talked about. It's my introduction when you introduce me. It's when you open my books, you see yourself within the pages. You identify within those pages. And I'm going to be real with you. I might sound cocky, but my readers are the bomb. And my supporters are the bomb. People, I have very diverse readers. And the way they pour into me, I can tear up right now because they flood my emails saying, I am a queer person and I've never read a book that I identify so much. I am a fat person and thank God you don't have them with low self-esteem. Like they're fat and they're here and they're in your face. I have some disabled stories that are coming up that's going to be released next year. And it's about, overcoming and finding love and joy. I want people, when the lasting effect I want on people is I want them to discover themselves and the world around them. So even if you are white, Black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, when you open up my book, I want you to take away a little more, take away something that you didn't have before. Do that make sense?
Yeah, it
That's
does.
what I want.
I love that. I love that. And it's just kind of like, I'm a big proponent that first of all, you should be reading diversely always, right? But every book that you read should not be a mirror. It shouldn't just be your representation on the page. Even if you are Black, right? You need to, yes, see your representation, but you also need the representation of other people, because that is how you learn to decenter yourself. That is how you learn that the world is bigger than just you, your community, what you've seen, what you've experienced. And it's important because it builds empathy. It allows you to understand that the world is so diverse. It's so big. And being a part of it is a beautiful thing. But to remember that you are a part of it and not the entire universe, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I absolutely understand what you mean. And I know that we've given a lot of advice in this podcast, but I'm going to ask you to like narrow it down, right? So if you could give only one piece of writing advice to specifically new authors, right? Starting out on their writing journey, what would it be?
Before we even got on the topic, I was already thinking this way before the podcast even started, that this is probably the best advice I could give. And it just so happened we went on a rant about it.
Gotta love that.
Get you some beta, I call them beta reader haters. So when I am in the lab cooking and it's ready to be prepared and I want somebody to taste it, your book, my reader, I have trained my alpha readers, my beta readers, and my critique partners to rip me to shreds. You cannot go into my manuscript without saying negative things, or I'm not going to invite you back.
No, that's real.
Get you some beta reader haters, alpha reader haters, critique haters, whatever you want to call them. But have them in your manuscript. Let them tear your stuff to pieces. Honestly, they are the worst. And I am so happy because I don't think there's nothing that anyone can say outside of my circle about my writing that will get to me that I haven't already heard from my beta reader haters. And so make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people that's not just going to tell you what you want to hear, but they tell you the truth. Make sure you surround yourself with a community of people that continue to help you grow and push your boundaries. Make sure that you surround yourself with people that want to see you do better. And wanting to see you do better is not enabling you to keep doing the same things you've been doing. If you want to grow, you have to come out of your circle, of that bubble. You have to push yourself. And sometimes that does hurt, but you have to keep going. So if that I think that's my advice. Surround yourself with good people that's going to push you to succeed.
Absolutely. And I second that mostly because it's just like, again, you guys probably know, but I have an author council. It is 3 people outside of myself. And those are the people where it's just like we are honest with each other. Like we're friends, right? So I said earlier to get you a group chat, right? That they're also the group chat, but it's also like these are the people that I trust the most. These are the people where they say, "Hey, this isn't right. This isn't hitting. You need to do better." I don't question it. I'm like, yeah, okay, I need to go back and fix it because there's a difference between, I'll say, true, like, I'm in here in the trenches with you. Like, I'm reading first versions. Like, I have first dibs at this story. Those people are the ones who need to be the absolute most honest with you. They need to love you, but they also need to love you enough to be honest with you and tell you when you're not doing what you need to be doing as an author, when you're not delivering, when that line that you love so much just doesn't fit, it doesn't flow, it doesn't belong here, right? Or when it's like, give us more, lean into this, lean into that. Those are the people that you really, truly need in your circle. You don't need a lot. You don't need to have 15 of these people, but you do need like 2 or 3 at the very minimum who are going to not we say rip to shreds because we're professionals, but like really genuinely who are going to go in and be like, I love you, but, and they need to have that caveat. And then that's how you get better as an author. And 9 times out of 10, at least for me, it's reciprocal. So it's just like I have these people who I trust them. I know that they also place that same kind of faith in me, which holds you accountable, you know? So it's just like you grow together. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of times, it's probably going to be another author who knows the craft, who can tell you this is why this isn't working and this is what I suggest. You need someone to bounce things off to go around. Like there's so much benefit in having community. And I know I talk about it a lot in all of my platforms, but when I say community, I don't just mean people who hype you up. Those people are going to come naturally if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You need people who are going to love and support you, but they're going to be more than just your fan, right? They're going to be your friend. And that is so important. So important. And just also a reminder, everybody can't be in a group chat. This is like a disclaimer. Everybody can't be in a group chat. You need somebody who's not going to screenshot the group chat. Just so you know, be mindful. Be mindful.
Everybody not your friends.
Some people are just your colleagues, and that's okay. You can have those as an indie author, just so you know. But
yes, indeed. Yes.
That being
Don't
said,
invite everybody to the circle.
No, please don't. Vet your people. But Noble, please let the people know where they can find you, and I will go ahead and take us out.
All right. Well, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads. I'm more active on Facebook and Threads. I am on TikTok as well. EA Noble is just type in EA Noble. or author EA Noble, and I'll pull right on up. I am trying to work on my newsletter because that's something else that, as an author, you need to be working on. But follow me there. I'm more active on Threads and Facebook, and I have a Facebook group that is legit, and we crack up in there all the time. So if you want to get to know me, my personality, and more things that are coming up, because there's a lot around the corner, definitely follow me on my socials.
All right, you guys, and y'all know that I will have links to her page in the place where you get it, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this on your podcast listening app. But that being said, that is it for the Written in Melanin podcast, you guys. If you like to support this podcast, then please share it with someone you think may enjoy it. Join the Patreon at patreon.com/written in melanin, or grab a copy of my books from my website, cmlockhart.com. Or if you're really fancy, go ahead and donate to the podcast so that we can continue making content for you guys. There are links in the show notes or the description box for everything, wherever you're listening to this at. And thank you guys again so much for listening. Until next time, I hope all your books are full of melanin.